Good morning. We're here with Andrew Halliday of Personalised Diagnostics. I get that right. How you doing, Andrew?
Great, thank you, Mike.
So if you'd like to tell us a little bit about who you are, your company, what it does. Obviously, you do a number of things. So give us an introduction as to Personalised Diagnostics and how it fits with what you do and how long you've been doing it for, please.
Okay, thanks. So Personalised Diagnostics, or PDX, less of a mouthful, is one of the companies that I've been working with over the last 20 years. So I'm a co-founder of that business, and it's in the health tech area. So initially it was human health tech, but we've also moved into animal health tech as well. So it's a bit of an umbrella organization. And what we typically do, or have done over the years, is digitize the journeys through in human healthcare and now animal healthcare. So we collect data from a patient or an animal farm electronically rather than on paper, and you'll be surprised at how many companies still use paper. And we push that through various stakeholders, whether it be doctors, nurses, pharmacists, laboratories, and make each of those points really efficient. So every single user that touches the system gets a really good journey. And that's really our selling point, because we spend a lot of time understanding the business and the processes that we're trying to work with, such that they're really good for each of the users, whether that be a customer service person or a logistics user or an accountant or the customer at the end. It's all of those people, so that they all like using the system, so they will carry on engaging with it.
Great. And how long has that specific area?
So we've been, as I say, so I started, I've been working in health tech for about 20 years in the technology side. I used to be a developer, so I moved through that and worked up to being more of a business analyst kind of role. And then when I left my proper job 10 years ago now, to co-found a travel health business, actually, where you put all your information in about where you're going on holiday, and it will give you the risks or the vaccination requirements and antimalarials and things like that. And it's really just getting that understanding of how people use technology to make it as simple for them as possible on the front and do all the complexity behind the scenes. And over the last 10 years, we've worked with, mainly in the private sector. There's lots of frustrations working with the NHS, certainly from a small provider's point of view, because their processes are so big and so slow. It doesn't sit very well with an agile small startup. When you think that a tender process might take 2 years to go through, there's no way, or it's very difficult for a small business to work on those kind of timelines, because you run out of money before you've even got through the tender stage. Yes. Which is quite frustrating, because the things that we're involved in are very helpful for anybody doing that kind of stuff. And you see all these inefficiencies in processes, and you think, small companies like ours are much better suited to provide solutions, but you can't get in there mainly because of the procurement issues in those large organizations. So when you do get in there, it's typically through an innovation grant or something like that, where you can work with an individual doctor and provide a solution. But then you've got the same issue of, however well it's worked, you've got to sell it out across the NHS, where that is very, very difficult, because even though the N stands for national, a lot of the procurement and things are very, very localized. So you end up selling it multiple times, which just takes a very, very long time.
So in terms of the last sort of 2 or 3 years, and involved with how did the COVID-19 impact you guys? What was the kind of biggest impact of that?
So we were, just before the pandemic started, myself and my business partner in PDX were just about to launch a product in remote diagnostics, and we were working with various doctors to do that. And then they all disappeared. They all got really busy in COVID because they were all called in to frontline services. But we were able to take our platform that we were developing for normal, just standard customer journey, so collecting personal demographics, working with a doctor to provide a diagnosis and giving the result back to the patient. That actually translated very nicely into COVID testing. So we started working with a laboratory in Cambridge, and we created a joint venture with them, whereby we digitized their COVID testing process. And again, when the COVID first started, a lot of the testing that went on, so I'm sure you've done a PCR test or a lateral flow test. When that started, a lot of the labs were doing the data collection on paper. So you'd literally write your name, your address, your date of birth, sex on a bit of paper, pop it in the envelope with the sample tube and post it to the lab. And some poor soul will be typing that into a computer at their end and to give you the result back. So that clearly wasn't scalable. So we digitized that process. It's very standard. A lot of the solutions we produce are very straightforward and standard, but it's just getting them right so people will use them. So we digitized it in a very secure manner, because obviously people are giving away their personal information. But it means that you as the individual put in your own information, and the laboratory just adds the result. So it's making the whole journey as efficient as possible. And throughout that process, I think we managed to do some of the process, like 2.5 million tests. So we started off working with one lab, and initially with occupational health companies. So if you wind back 2 years, a lot of companies were trying to get their employees back into the office, so they were doing a lot of testing. But we ended up being involved in a direct-to-consumer model as well. So we provided the digital journey for Boots Pharmacy. So if you went into Boots, you would use our system to capture information, which again, for a small organization like ours, people always ask us, how on earth did you get into something like Boots? And some of it was relationships. So we'd done previous work with them, so they knew what we could do. But then the other is just the speed and the agility. When there are other providers are massive multi-billion-dollar organizations, it takes weeks and months for them to even arrange a meeting or a budget or a project and all those things, by which time we've delivered them a product
that's working.
So the COVID stuff kicked us off really nicely into where we are now. And what we realized is that all of our customers and partners, once COVID testing came to an end, they were very well set up for the next stage. And I'm sure you've seen it in the press. There's lots more diagnostics testing. Consumers are more willing to test themselves and share health data online because of COVID. I think that's probably pushed a lot of the technology on maybe 10 years.
That's right.
And there's lots of new tests coming in now that the laboratories have got, like home diagnostics for cancer screening and such like, that are available to members of the public to do themselves, rather than having to go through a medical route first. They can almost self-screen, which obviously brings up its own issues. But it does allow, the processes are in place now in all the areas for that to happen really nicely.
Really interesting. What you're doing, and obviously the space that you're working in, it's it sounds like sort of exciting, really, and that agility to be able to adapt to the marketplace and sort of outperform some bigger people and compete. It's fascinating stuff to hear. Thank you for the share. So just kind of moving on to the future, really, what does that look like for you from where you are now, and what do you see as the main challenges are going ahead for you as a business?
Yeah, so I think as I just said, I think the COVID stuff pushed our the need for our services ahead probably about 10 years. So we've seen a lot more opportunity because of the digitization of healthcare pathways and the need for that to go ahead. And you've seen, all the inefficiencies are now coming to light around, the NHS running, such their backlogs and all that kind of stuff. Pharmacies being used a lot more. So the opportunity to provide services into frontline stuff outside potentially of the NHS. So pharmacies are really good, a good area for businesses like ours because they're more they're smaller than the NHS. Typically, you've got a few big chains, but they have they operate in a more consumer friendly manner. So they're open longer hours. They have that people will go into that store for other things, pick up their prescription or such like, and they want to utilize their staff because they're expensive, and the opportunity to move some of the stuff that traditional NHS or GPs or hospitals would do into pharmacy or at home. The opportunity there is huge. The challenges for that are mainly around the integration of the data. So if you think about going into a private healthcare setting, you have to give all your data to them, which may or may not, probably not, get back to your primary healthcare record, because there's just no mechanism to do that. So from an IT perspective, that functionality exists in lots of other areas, sharing data, but for large organizations like the NHS and others, it's a very difficult. Integration is a very expensive word. But even within the NHS, you can go to hospital and they sometimes can't see your GP record. So it's not just outside, it's the whole thing. So that's been a challenge for a long time, and I think that will still be a challenge, but less so. I think the movement is going in the right direction, and it will allow for this integrated view of your own data. It's just rather frustrating that you can see all these potential opportunities to make things better, but there's just nothing that a small organization can do about it.
Yeah, systemic issues that are going to take a bit of time to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's, again, very interesting, a very interesting share we can all kind of relate to with regards to the NHS and pharmacies and your own sort of data records and things like that. So moving on to yourself as a business owner, what would you say, if you can pick one to date so far, would be your biggest learning?
Making sure you employ the best people. And I think as an owner, setting up processes and environments so that they can do their best work for you. There's no good employing somebody really good and then micromanaging them to death so that they hate it. Putting in process and environment so that they can do everything. So in our world, that's typically maybe the developers who create the products and services at a very technical level, giving them all the tools and the space they need to do that for you within parameters. Obviously, within healthcare, you've got security issues, data governance, and that kind of stuff. So there is a framework there, but within that, just let them get on with it, because that's these people typically are expensive as well, and that's what you're paying them for. And you've got to give them the space to be creative and productive. And if you do that, you'll reap the benefits from it.
Yeah, that resonates in terms of, we describe it as a football pitch here at Action Coach. So you got the rules of the game, but you can play anywhere within that football pitch, within those sort of parameter rules as you mentioned. So definitely a good share on that. Thank you. So if you were to advise someone younger, or it doesn't have to be younger, I suppose, but someone who's starting out in business for the first time, is there a piece of advice or some information, wise words that you may share with them if you're in front of them today?
Yeah, I think I think of it with my own kids. It's your experiences make who you are, right? So if you're in a job that you don't think it's going to be something that's going to you're going to be working in 20 years, what you're doing right now doesn't that experience, your interaction, if you're working in a part-time in a coffee shop or a call center, those skills that you're developing there will be very useful for you in the future. You might not realize it right now, and you might not like what you're doing to earn money, but they will be invaluable for you. So it's taking those experiences and making them in a positive thing, and looking ahead how they might affect you in the future. You've got customer interactions, or you're dealing with conflict if you're in a call center and people are shouting at you all day. But it's that those experiences mean that you're not, they're in a varied spaces. It means you're not operating in a bubble, so you're getting lots of different input which will round you. And if you see that in a positive way, when the thing that you want to do in the future comes along, you've got all these other experiences that will make you better at something new. And then the other thing I think is taking the opportunities when they do come, particularly if people are younger. It's a bit patronizing to say this to my kids, but take the opportunities when you come along, because it's much easier to take them when you're younger, when you don't have the responsibilities that tend to come as you get older, whether that be travel or a job that you're not sure about, but it's maybe a bit outside your comfort zone. Take it. If the opportunity arises, push yourself out of that comfort zone a little bit more.
Sounds like good advice to me. Yeah. I can appreciate that. That's really good. Thank you for that. So what inspires you to do what you do? Is there anything, it might be that you read currently or that you listen to? You mentioned team earlier, the people that you work with, or friends, family, anything like that, any inspiration that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one, because obviously you read a lot, you see things on the news or whatever, you talk to lots of people, and I think that the one thing that it's very easy to get bogged down into stuff that you can't change, whatever's going on in the world or whatever, but there are things that you can influence. So when we work with clients, we see inefficiencies everywhere. And what's really good is understanding that you can make the changes. You can apply your experience and your the learnings that you've had from all your life, and look at how you can make things better and apply those changes where you can. And some people will really embrace that change and look for it. Others are a bit resistant to it. But when you can show them how things can be better by maybe doing a process in a different way, or digitizing something, or thinking about things different, and then you can actually measure it and see it in action, it's a really good feeling to be able to see how much better you can make things. And also, going back to taking opportunities, when you see there's so many people that will particularly my kids are going through university at the moment, and so many of their friends, they're on courses that they don't like, and they think they have to sit there for another 2.5, 3 years doing something that they really don't enjoy. But the people that think, do you know what, I can change this, I can do something myself, and it's really hard, but once they've done it, they're so much happier. And you think, that was really good that you've taken that on yourself. You've realized that yes, it is a difficult decision, and you're only 18 years old, but when you've done it, you can see the relief and the motivation that they then get for the thing they actually want to do, probably in the first place, for whatever reason they didn't do it. And you see that and you think, people can make these changes themselves. Not always, it's a bit of a privileged position to come from, but when you see people doing that, it's really quite special that they've taken that step.
Again, it really resonates with sort of coaching and the aspects of business coaching that we work with, where, as you say, people enable them to help make the changes to make the improvements to their lives and their business. And once the kind of BFOs, the light switch goes on, the blinding flashes of the obvious, and they go, "Oh, I've been doing it that way, but I can do it now. I get it." Light bulb moment where suddenly a big progression can be made in a short space of time once the connections are made. Yeah, that really resonates. Love that share. Thank you very much. Good inspiration. And then lastly, are there any sort of, not offers, promotions, but latest news around your business that you'd like to share? Any sort of updates as to something newsworthy that you feel that's good to share, or you may want to direct people to your website or anything to have a look at?
Yeah, we're operating at the moment in a very niche area. So our first product that PDX is launching is in the veterinary sector. We're going to launch it on the, we've changed the date a little bit when it should be launched, but the 5th of November, so that the marketing team can, put fireworks on the social media or whatever. And that area is very different for us. I mean, what we've realized is that it's, the overlap between animal health and human health is huge. You've got doctors and vets, very similar in the way they operate. And there's a whole new, except for, for us it's exciting, but if you're not into farming and veterinary, it's probably not so. But the way that they operate currently with paper. So we're launching that in November, and that should, once we get going there, that will help with a lot of the animal welfare pathways there to digitize those processes, and then hopefully in the new year that will expand and we'll get more of our human health stuff done. But we're currently in the process of building new solutions. So this time next year we should have a portfolio of things that we can talk about. But at the moment it's a work in progress.
Yeah. Cool. Brilliant, Andrew. Thank you very much for sharing everything that you have with us today. It's been really, really insightful. All the best with everything, and I hope it goes from strength to strength for you.